Fantastic. So we'll hand over to Dawn. Dawn, if you could unmute yourself for our welcome and your updates. We appreciate you being on the webinar today.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the learning community. I'm really excited for the progress that we've been making. I have been traveling around with our OSET and OCAM team for about the past 2.5 weeks. And so I've almost seen every one of you, and you all are doing really great work out there. I wanted to just give you a couple of grant updates. One is, as a result of our last learning community in November, some of you realized that you might need to do some budget revisions to accommodate you as you move forward with your listening session. So I want to remind you that if you need to do a budget revision, you will need to send me an email as soon as possible. And by as soon as possible, I mean close of business tomorrow if you need to do one, because I have to then go into the GFMS system and send it back to you. So I just need a quick email that says, Dawn, we're going to do a budget revision. We think we might need to revise some things around incentives or transcriptionists, and let me know. So I will bounce that back to you. And then just before you send it in officially, if you could please email me or give me a call so that I know it's there waiting, so I can push that forward as soon as possible. So just wanted to remind you of that. Also, I've gone in and any disbursement requests that have been put in have already been moved forward as well. So those are just sort of the technical grant pieces I wanted to let you know. Additionally, I also want to say, which we'll be sending out something officially, that our learning community for February was rescheduled based on the conversation that we had at the last one in November. So our learning community in person for February will now be on Wednesday, February 14th. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to all the things we're going to learn today.
Thank you, Dawn. We really appreciate you welcoming us. Are there any questions before we move on for Dawn? You can unmute your phone or you may type them in the chat bar. So what questions do we have for Dawn? Dawn, it looks like we have no questions, so we will move on, and we would like to welcome OCAM coach Stacy Gibson. Hi, Stacy. Could you unmute your phone? Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the successes that some of our different communities have had over the past couple of years. I wanted to say that I really enjoyed watching the videos that you guys put together last month and the ones that you put together this summer. But I thought it would be nice to hear a little bit more about some of the successes and the things that you want to celebrate with some of the other coalitions and communities. So feel free, whoever wants to go first.
You can either unmute your phone and talk about your successes over the phone, or you can write them in the chat box. So a great opportunity to share the good things that are going on in your community. Stacy, I see here that Laura is typing.
Yeah. Come on, it's got to be more than Laura.
Dawn says, I've heard lots of things, so I know y'all have things to say.
Carla has things. I have something to share.
Okay, and who is this?
This is Charlotte.
Hi, Charlotte.
Hello. We just had a HARSA meeting that ended about 20 minutes ago. And one of the activities that we worked on in the past month and a half was an event that we partnered with Mercer partners on a training to address opiate use and stigma. And it was very well attended. It was a collaboration between CARSA and the hospital. And we had presenters, offered nursing CAUs, and had a very good turnout in our evaluations for the training our SPF grant, but certainly helping to bring us more into the community and those people that we're going to need in the future. So.
Great. That's a great way to build capacity within Seneca County. Great.
Absolutely.
I see that Laura Sanford from Mercer County said we've had good support from two of our schools, Fort Recovery and Parkway schools, and they're going to set up a focus group with those students soon. Great. And Frank from Carroll County, the CLIR data submission and comms data submission. I'm sure that was a success, that accomplishment, right? And Robin, Hardin County, they've elected a coalition president. They have a new middle, sorry, my screen jumped. They have a new coalition president and a new middle school youth on their coalition, and they met with the principals to teach them how to retrieve their data. Great. AC Logwood, they've had their first meeting. Oops, okay, people keep typing and my screen keeps jumping. Sorry about that. They had their first meeting where the opiate task force broke into two subcommittees, prevention and early identification and treatment and recovery. The breakout proved to produce a much more productive conversation related to community readiness, messaging, and planning focus groups. Oh, that sounds like great conversation. Frank from the National Health Observance project completion. Thanks to Stacy. Kudos to your partner. Trish and Kathy, the comms data submission. We're having lots of successes. You guys feel more comfortable typing than speaking. Laura again, Amy's meeting with the principals right now to give them the data. Pray that they will receive it well and come on board for data collection next year. That is a success. You get some more folks typing. See, you guys are doing a lot with this project. This is great.
Stacy, it jumped. If you look up above Laura, there's Kim Dooley from Warren.
Oh, okay. Sorry. We've expanded their Teen Alliance Council from 15 to 30 kids from local schools. That's great. Jody type. Tusk Coalition received a grant for drug deactivation bags, and it's creating a great opportunity to educate community members about prescription drug misuse. And they've been engaging many partners. I think it's great that you guys are kind of able to come up with these successes, because I think sometimes we're so involved in the work that we do on a daily basis with our coalition. It's nice to be able to step back, take a breather, and celebrate these successes. Make sure your coalition knows about these successes as well. Jay Gregg, the Spark Holmes County has presented to a new partner, the Family and Children First Council, which will greatly increase the membership capacity. That's a great group to engage within your community. Oh, and John says, welcome Pam from Holmes County. Well, thank you all for celebrating your successes with the group. Make sure when you guys get together at your face-to-face meetings that you continue to talk about this, and hopefully we'll continue to have this on the agenda so we can keep again celebrating those wins that we have within our community.
Thank you, Stacy, for facilitating, and also thanks to this group, because I believe it was Amy from Mercer County who suggested that we keep this on the agenda, and I think it was wonderful to hear from you, and hopefully we'll continue to make this a standing item. The other item that you all requested is to have some 5 minutes of solution finding, and we have Nicole Schisler, our OCAM coach.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Good morning, Nicole. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Well, as Holly indicated, in your October face-to-face meeting, you were seeking an opportunity to ask questions or look for some peer-to-peer support for related to, of course, the interviews or focus groups, because that will come up later. So perhaps there's some things that were typed in your successes that you're wanting to know how that was implemented or what that looks like for the coalition. Maybe you're seeking help on organizing your agendas better and your meetings, organizational structures. So I'm going to open the floor to see what you guys want to know from each other. So this is an opportunity for 5 minutes of solution finding and asking questions of each other.
As a reminder, you can type in the chat box or you may unmute your phone.
Part of the work of a coalition, you know, is to generate resources, whether that looks like time, talent, treasure, whatever it might be, in kind or cash. And it looks like Jody may have written an outside grant to generate some more opportunity for some more things in the community. So you might ask her how she, you know, where that came from, what that looks like, what that could look like for your coalition. Or silence is fun too.
I see some typing going on, Nicole.
I do. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can. Who do we have on the line?
It's Jody. While people are typing, you had just mentioned that opiate deactivation bags. I think a lot of you have seen Summit present on those at like an OPAC. I think there's a lot of grants out there to deal with the opiate issue, but for those that are dealing with the prescription drug misuse issue, I will tell you, I'm seeing this as a wonderful vehicle. How we're doing it is we purchased about 9,000 bags, and we have a launch next week, but it allows us to connect with non-traditional partners, so really thinking outside of the box, really working with libraries and funeral homes and pretty much daycare providers, early intervention people to pass out the bags. And the bags are just really one way to help people have conversations about this issue, but I can see where it's really going to build capacity on this issue as we continue to work this direction. So our particular grant did come through OhioMHAS. Just want to throw that out.
Thank you, Jody.
Mm-hmm.
Robin, it looks like your response might be incomplete, so maybe you could unmute your line and just ask the question, where do we, maybe, or W, if you could please unmute yourself and maybe ask the question?
Yes, thank you. I don't know why my computer's not letting me type now, but I just want to know where we would look for outside grants.
Well, Jody just gave me an example of some smaller opportunities from OhioMHAS. I would encourage you to, you know, stick with the mission and vision of the coalition and think about what could best support some of the different strategies that you've looked at. I know that Jody's coalition has been in existence for quite some time, so they might have some different funding or different directions from, you know, what we're working on here through the SPF project. But I don't know, does someone else want to answer that?
It's Jody again. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Jody.
If you all have access to a grant department, I think they can do a lot of farming out there for us. But for us, community foundations are also another option in your local communities. I think if you have some momentum already on prescription drug disposal, it's a nice fit. Because I think a lot of us in coalitions have been working on that drop-off box for a while. But where I think we were successful, and we are talking within our communities, we have these boxes, but especially since we're rural communities, we have a lot of barriers to get to those boxes, whether it's that rural that elderly population or people that have barriers to go to police departments. So I think, you know, this is one area where we've been doing some work and we can collect some data. And if we can say to our community stakeholders, look, we need to get these prescription drugs off the street, I think there's a nice fit for those community foundations. In addition to, if you can look what's going on at a larger level. Thank you.
I'll also do a little plug for the upcoming training that we're having January 25th and 26th, and that is grant writing for the prevention professionals, and that will be here in Columbus at Prevention Action Alliance. Additional information will be coming out about that very soon, but just want to let you know that those opportunities will be available to really explore local grants, state grants, and national grants as well.
And this is Holly, and I've been doing a lot of work with the philanthropy sector, and what's interesting is the philanthropy sector is not one of the traditional 12 sectors that is in that sector wheel by CADCA, but philanthropy does really want to help and they want to get involved. So you may want to look at the community foundations that are in your area and invite them to be members of your coalition. You may not get funding with them from right away, but they're conveners. Also, many of the community foundations are tied to larger statewide organizations like Philanthropy Ohio, which is a statewide network of philanthropic entities. So having them at your table, inviting them, thinking of them as a non-traditional sector may be a great idea, and you just cultivate and nurture those relationships over time, and you never know when they might be at the table and you need funding for something and they're able to say, hey, that sounds like it fits with our mission. And they're able to help out. So think of them as that extra sector for sure.
That is an awesome idea. Thank you.
Just to wrap up this section, it looks like Frank indicated that he's been visiting other groups, different meetings, Family and Children First Council, Opiate Task Force, and a Pastors Association. So it looks like building relationships among some different groups in his area. And Stacey suggested to Robin specifically, but also information for others, is to sign up for some specific news releases from some different statewide organizations, and you can see in the chat box which ones she listed. The other one that I will add to that is the Prescription Drug Abuse Action Group. That is a work group of the Department of Health Injury Prevention Partnership, and all three of the work groups that they work with, in particular prescription drugs would be most specific to this group, but they offer many grants. We just got one earlier this year, and it's for $5,000, and we purchased 6 drop boxes for the health department here in Cincinnati. So smaller, nice little opportunities to do some specific strategies with. So this my section is over, so I will pass it back to Holly to pass it to Derek.
Sounds good. And the other is, don't forget your professional organizations. Now that you have the SPF PFS funding, I'm joining the Ohio Public Health Association, OPHA, which organizational memberships are very inexpensive, as well as the Ohio Society for Public Health Education. Those organizations also run weekly or monthly newsletters where they push out information that includes a lot of things on grants as well. So looking at kind of coming out of the box and into the public health arena and tapping into some of those organizations may provide you with information and resources. All right, so you all worked very hard on providing some status updates for us about your focus group and group interview process, and I'm delighted to introduce Derek Longmire, our OPM coach, and he will walk you through your status updates as well as helping you get feedback from one another. Derek, can you go live, please?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for all the work you did. It was very fun to review the slides that you had submitted to see that you've made and see that while we're all working in Mercer doing it in different ways, which speaks so perfectly to the uniqueness of each of your coalitions and the communities that you work within. So just wanted to provide some time to review each of the you submitted, and by reviewing of them, I had a couple of questions, and if you have questions, then feel free to also ask that, and either the or just come on live. And that's one of the neat things about the learning community is the learning and sharing that we come together. This is something that we really are working together, so hopefully beneficial all of you. And we'll begin with Tuscarawas County.
Derek, I'm sorry, but we're having trouble with your audio. So you're coming up and you're kind of breaking up, so I don't know if you're too close to your microphone or how that's working, so.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Your line is pretty fuzzy and choppy, so are you using the voice phone connection or are you using your computer?
I am using my voice phone connection, but let's try something different. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, much better.
Okay, fantastic. So first up, let's from Jody to talk a little bit about what Tuscarawas has been working on. Do a slide and then a couple of questions that I kind of saw as came through, and if other folks have questions, again, feel free to ask that in either the question or in the chat section or just unmute your line. But you can put your hand.
I'm here, Derek.
Fantastic.
Did you want me to just go through the slide? I was having a hard time hearing you. I'm sorry.
Yep, yes. You can slide. That would be great.
Very good. One of the things that I think might make mine a little bit more easy is I only have one school district in the area of focus we're at. So we are just focusing on newcomers town, so they only have one school district. So we're still discussing what that looks like in the recruitment process with the school. Staffing for the focus group, we are looking at 3 persons from the coalition for the adult focus groups and 3 persons from the coalition for the youth focus group. We have really engaged coalition members that will do a great job with this. The only thing is the school guidance counselor who I'm working with did request that I did the youth interview, and the reason is everyone that sits at the table on the Newcomers Town Coalition is from Newcomers Town, and they really felt that the students will know anyone else on the coalition, and that they would probably be a little more honest and open with a voice they did not know. So that made a lot of sense, and we will respect that. Where else are we at? The adult recruitment strategies. This is what we're discussing right now. Y'all okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yep.
Perfect. What we've discussed is that we will be, oh wait a second.
We can hear you.
Okay. What we've discussed is that we are going to target for our focus groups grades 8 through 12 because that is our focus area. And the school is going to choose a classroom in each grade. So whether it be, and that's what they're still deciding, whether it's English language arts class. So they will randomly choose a class for each grade. And then every student in that class will receive a letter for recruitment and one for their parent. So the hope is that then we're just randomly targeting youth and adults from that age range. So that's what it'll look like. We have not developed what that recruitment letter looks like. And some of that's because the school is still discussing how they want to do that. So that's where we're at. The recruitment strategies, we will offer incentives for both youth and adult. We're thinking about gas cards for the adults and food cards for the youth. We have not committed on either of those because we have not met as a whole coalition since the last learning community. And the coalition knows the community better than I would feel comfortable making any kind of guidance on here. For example, there's 2 gas stations down there, one smaller business, but they have a lot of drug paraphernalia in there. So we need to decide how we want to support, who we want to support. And I'm thinking with the food cards, the community might want to choose someone local that has a local business that will pour back into the community. So exactly what they look like is still to be determined. I guess our key success is the principals in the middle school and the high school they're all in, they're actively working with us, our superintendent's in, and they have one guidance counselor for their district, and that's who I'm working with. So she's wonderful to work with. In fact, she came to the youth adult summit on Friday, and that was neat because she's a new school for us to work with as of this year, and it connected a lot of dots. Like, so this is how coalition and youth led and all this tie in. And so that was kind of a neat success as well. I guess what else do I want to share? We're still working on details. I guess the only question was if anyone has a neat recruitment letter or flyer and would like to share it, I would certainly be open. I'm just not sure. You know, again, the coalition hasn't met. Do we want to go fun? Do we want to go formal? What's that look like? Kind of have a feel of that flyer. And otherwise, I just don't know what I don't know yet, so that's probably why I said no questions at present. I'm sure they will come.
Great, thanks, Jody, and hopefully everyone can hear me better. I apologize for that. Switched from my office phone to my cell phone, and for some reason that seems to work better. Do
you have any questions for me, Derek?
And I'm looking now, it shows that Robin is typing. And Robin, if you'd like to either continue typing or unmute your line, and think that you're smart to look at the uniqueness of your community and also think about some of those tricky things of if we offer a gas card, other than buying gas, what are things that can purchase there, and really making sure that we're appropriately promoting a healthy lifestyle. So I think your community is definitely working within that. And Robin, you still show that you're typing.
I know my computer is frozen on that side, so I think it's just going to stay that way. And I'll just I'll unmute when I have something to say.
Fantastic. And Hardin County is actually next, Robin. So if you'd like to review the work that you've done thus far, that would be fantastic. Robin, are you able to unmute and review your slides?
I am unmuting. I'm unmuted, but I don't see my slides.
It looks like your computer's frozen because we're seeing it on the screen.
Okay. Let me see if I can pull up the ones that I sent Holly.
Okay. Maybe Derek could read what you wrote on the slide, and then maybe you could add.
Absolutely.
Yep, absolutely. And the status, you said that your focus groups are tentatively scheduled. And for your tentative schedule, where were you looking to schedule those, and what time of day or time of week through this month or now, or for next month?
We, as we met with the coalition in November and talked about what the focus group looked like, then it was decided that we would try and schedule them before Christmas, because with the timeline and our ONU students being out most of January, we would have to change what that timeline looks like. So we're looking to do our parents. We're tentatively set for the 12th of December so that we can get them out of the way because they work and have things to do with Christmas coming up. And we'll hold those at the office here in town in Kenton. We're kind of equally situated from all the school districts. And then we have engaged again with the student advocate from USV, and he will help us also get some parents along with us from coalition members. The kids we will do after Christmas and when they return, and we will do 2 middle school groups and 2 high school groups. And those will be done at the schools so that we can be in the school environment in another room, and we can have those incentives there. I think sometimes when they come to the office, they feel intimidated, like if they have to say the right things, and we just want them to feel comfortable in their environment.
Great, and it showed that the key successes that you had were coalition members who want to participate in this. And can you talk a little bit about the experience of introducing this to your coalition and kind of their response?
Sure. So we introduced it to the coalition and just talked about the fact that with the grant, we needed qualitative and quantitative data. And so we wanted to just drill down a little bit more about what they thought and what their kids or the kids from the community truly thought. I don't know if they really had a position on it. I think that it's just something that has to be done. And so I've had several coalition members say they want to be involved in it. So we'll use those interview skills to help us get the data that we need.
Fantastic. And was there anything else that you wanted to add? It shows that for the questions for your peers, you had where and how do you recruit. Do you want to expand on that any more?
Well, when I did the slide, I had very little in place, so everything kind of happened before I left on vacation. So I was wondering were they talking to the principals? Were they putting out things to just the youth? Were they, did they do parents before kids? But as it turns out, we're going to do our parents first because they're the hardest to wrangle as far as time goes and their time restraints with work and, again, the holidays coming up.
Super. Thank you, Robin, so much for sharing. And now we'll move on to Warren County.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Fantastic. Would you like to review your slide and talk a little bit about the progress today?
Yeah. So far with our focus groups, we have scheduled our first two. Our parent focus group is going to be on December 14th, and then we have the first student focus group scheduled for December 20th. We haven't got to the January ones yet, but we're working on some tentative dates for that. Staffing our focus groups, that's going to be done by coalition members, helping be the facilitators and the co-facilitators. I'm going to be talking more tomorrow with our coalition about this project. We haven't had a chance to fully meet with the coalition because when this project was assigned, we had already had our November meeting, and we don't have our coalition meeting for December until tomorrow. Adult recruitment strategies, we placed a flyer or a notice on our Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition Facebook page, and that's got a little bit of feedback, but it at least got it out in the community. Other ways that we've been recruiting is just by word of mouth. Among coalition members and the different groups in the community to be able to recruit for the adults. Youth recruitment strategies, we've reached out to school counselors and resource coordinators as well as our Teen Alliance Council, and we placed an ad on our Teen Alliance Council's GroupMe app. So we've been able to get some of the teens to volunteer to do the process through that. Some key successes. Once again, we've scheduled 2 of the interview dates for December, one for teens, one for adults. We have pinned down our locations. We've sent out confirmation letters to the students with the releases for their parents to sign, as well as sending out the parent confirmation letters for those parents that are going to participate in the parent group session. We have a transcriber in place for our interviews. The transcriber may be attending the interviews and transcribing on spot, but she hasn't confirmed that yet. If not, she's going to transcribe them after they've been done. We're going to provide a meal for both interviews, and that's our incentive, a full dinner for the students participating as well as the parents participating. And our interviews are being held in the evening, both interviews versus during the day or weekend or et cetera. What else we would like to share? We've had a difficult time actually locating youth, so we're a little bit opposite than the county that just went before me. Parents tend to be more apt so far on this project to volunteer and want to be able to give their opinion, but we've not been as successful with getting youth pinned down to do the project, so that's one of our struggles so far. Questions for peers. What strategies have you used for advertising for this effort? Any further ideas would be great. And then I do have I'm sorry, go ahead, Derek.
So I was just going to ask, or just say that I think we're going to be touching on some of those as we move through, and did you have another, and then I had an additional question, but please feel free to finish your report out, and then I'll ask my question.
Okay, sure. One of the questions for OSET OCAM is, our problem of practice is underage drinking among 8th to 10th graders in Warren County. So when we've been advertising for the listening sessions for the youth, we've pretty much advertised for this specific population. So we wanted to, we wondered if it would be okay to change our advertising to request youth from 8th to 10th grade and reward the advertising to state something like, we're seeking 12 to 16-year-olds to participate in the focus groups regarding underage drinking, because a lot of 8th to 10th graders fall within the range of age 12 to 16. And this would allow for us to have a larger recruitment span. But we weren't sure what the thoughts on that would be from OSET or OCAM.
And Holly, would you like to address that?
Sure, I think I would just like, it sounds like you really thought about what resonates in your community, and we've talked about how you can use the term focus group or group interview and use those interchangeably, whatever works. I think the same holds true for here. So 8th to 10th graders isn't working, but you think 12 to 16 would resonate. You really have justified it, and you've made a thoughtful, purposeful, intentional decision. So you know your community much better than I do. So if you think that would work, then I would say go for it. I don't know. Derek, would you have anything else to add?
Well, I think one of the biggest things to always look at is being culturally competent to your community, and it sounds like you're doing just that. So I think that that's a good approach. And so you get the stamp of approval from OCAM, and it sounds like you do from OSET as well.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for your strategic thinking on that. And I think that's what's most important. And I would like to encourage all project directors, if you're doing something that doesn't seem to be working, then try and figure out how you can make that change. And I think, Kim, you really were a great example of that. So I appreciate you being upfront with that on your slide.
Yeah, and then also Nicole had asked, are we recruiting based on specific schools or the county in general? We were recruiting at this time on the county in general. I mean, we have, sorry. From our schools. Oh, yeah, sorry, just from our schools. Yeah, we have eight schools in Warren County, and 5 are in our problem of practice.
The reason I asked him is that's a 4-year age range, and your grades are only 2 years apart. So my son is an old 6th grader in Warren County, and he's 12. So I think you should adjust that maybe to say 14 to 16-year-olds.
Well, here's what we were. This is Vicki Hott. I'm stalking here. I didn't put my name in the.
Popped in.
The reason we were looking at that is we wanted to cover the whole range. There are some young 8th graders and some older 8th graders.
Yeah.
And we wanted to make sure that we covered that whole range. My son was a young student, and so he would have been 12. And some kids are older. So we wanted to make sure that we covered the whole age range that would cover 8th to 10th grade.
Yeah, I understand. I live in Warren County, as you guys know, so if there's anything I can do to help you, just even asking specific, kids in our neighborhood, I'm definitely willing to help you at that level, because there's a lot of, things and the different schools that you guys are hosting. So I just wanted to intersect there with any assistance I can help with.
Sure, thank you. Unfortunately, we've got a couple of schools that aren't in our
Problem of practice.
Yeah, right.
Miami is one of them.
And it could be that it's not an either or, but a both and. Because, for example, my son is in 8th grade and just turned 13. So that's why I didn't even blink. So I see what you mean in terms of the age range. So it could be we're seeking young people ages 12 to 16 who are in 8th through 10th grade.
Right.
And so instead of an either or.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Yeah.
To change our advertising, yeah.
And then Nicole, Nicole Schisler, would that allay your concern a little bit? Because I see where you're coming from too.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea to say,
Yeah.
to say what grades they're in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, okay, we like that.
And Nicole, if you know kids in our 5 schools, we'll be happy to.
Reach out to the parents, yes.
Yes, can you please just send me an email to remind me? I know I have access to it somewhere, but.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, definitely, thank you for offering assistance.
Sure.
Thank you, ladies. And would you be able to talk a little bit about the GroupMe app? I wasn't familiar with that and thought it might be something that the rest of the folks might want to learn about as well.
Yes, our Teen Alliance Council, I guess, used to test the adults over the council. So because that got a little bit, I guess, tenuous at times on evenings and weekends, one of the leaders of the Teen Alliance Council developed a GroupMe participation for the Teen Alliance Council. So she created that link for everybody to now message each other on the GroupMe app for the TAC students. And that's how we send reminders about our meetings. The teams communicate with each other about different events, or it could just be about anything, and we do it on the GroupMe app. So
Because the Teen Alliance Council represents 6 of our 8 school districts.
correct.
So they're not always in school to see each other, so this is a great way for them to be able to communicate about what's going on. And they actually, for Red Ribbon Week, planned an activity where 2 of the schools were playing each other in football, and so they were able to communicate back and forth on a project that they worked together that happened at the football game. So it's a great resource for.
Oh, yeah, and during Red Ribbon Week too, the different students at the different schools participating that are part of our Teen Alliance Council were able to put pictures right on the GroupMe app so they can show the other schools, look at what we did to the football fence, or look what we did to the front doors of the junior high, for Red Ribbon Week. And then kids in other schools could immediately see what was going on within the county. So it's a great way for the teams to communicate for everything, weekly, daily, for the Teen Alliance Council.
Fantastic, thank you. And just looking at the chat statement, Robin says that this is a great conversation, and this is one of the benefits of getting everyone together, whether face-to-face or digitally, that we can learn and share. And Dawn says that it's a great idea using GroupMe, and that she uses it all the time. So I'll have to explore that as well.
And we have an undergraduate student here who is helping us with our technology, and she says that they use it all the time too for the group she's involved in.
Yeah.
So check it out, GroupMe. Moving on to Champaign County, and Stacy, if you want to talk a little bit about what you're working on. And while we're pulling Stacy up, and feel free to drop those chats into those thoughts and suggestions into the chat section, and we can continue to monitor that and share both verbally and in text writing as well.
Hi, Derek. Sorry, I was talking and didn't realize you guys didn't hear me.
Not a problem.
So we took, after the last face-to-face learning community, I took the information back to our PDC team, and we were going through our local data and looking at, because our data reports had come in, and started talking about the focus groups. And so they decided that there will be 4 of us who conduct them, and we'll do them in teams of 2. And so myself and Rochelle Shepard, Tammy Nickel, and Jessica Doggett, our youth coordinator, are going to assist. I look for Tammy and Rochelle to primarily do the adults, and then Jessica and I to work with the youth is how we think we're going to split it out. We are scheduling ours for the first 2 weeks in January for the adults and the last 2 weeks in January for the youth. And our recruitment strategies are that our opiate task force, we met with them yesterday, and they are sending us contact information for an adult that they're gonna recommend participate, and they're gonna do a face-to-face ask of participation, for us. And then if that doesn't work, we're going to locate an adult coach, in the community to help recruit parents and champion this effort for us. With our youth, we are using, our social media to recruit, as well as our CHAMPS members, which is our youth committee, where we're asking them to bring one person they meet every Monday night, so it'll work out that we can schedule a couple nights to do the focus groups, and they can bring people along, and then they can have their meetings separately. So we're hoping to have some success soon. I think the first success was that the coalition was pretty bought into doing it, and the PDC team kind of coming up with the ideas, and then the opiate task force and CHAMPS being able to help us carry it out, I think was really helpful and effective. And so we are going to use stipends and also feed them for both groups to attend. And then, our biggest question is if anybody had already been through this process, which looking through the notes, it doesn't look like anybody has yet. What would be the biggest do-over moment that they had, or the biggest lesson learned, or whoopsie, or, didn't think about it quite that way. That would be helpful to know, or to kind of have a running dialogue list as folks are going through this process. And for me, I don't have any questions for OSET or OPM. I shared the link that was sent out the other day with all of the access to the materials for the focus group, and each of our focus group leaders are going to have those materials, and we're going to meet after our site visit today and be able to go through those materials, make sure everybody's comfortable. So we've had a great deal of conversation about it, but they actually have it to look at and ask questions. Our site visit is this afternoon, so we see this as being an opportunity to ask those questions as well.
Fantastic. And you talked about kind of having that peer support and doing that face-to-face ask. What led you to make that decision?
Well, we have a really robust coalition. It's about 100 members big. When you look at all the different committees, and the two committees that are primarily focusing on this project, have a nice size membership. And so what better way than to have them use their sphere of influence, their relationships, to identify folks and not leave it up to 2 or 3 people to do. And then it's just one thing. It was what I gave them for Christmas. So their Christmas gift was that they had to bring me a person to participate.
Is that your gift to them, or their gift to you?
That is my gift to them.
It sounds like a combination.
And that is their gift to me.
Well, fantastic, and it's great to just continue to see how different groups operate and are able to engage. And I think having that face-to-face piece and having someone come along and have that person they know will really help and aid their comfort level too, and hopefully with engagement. So I really like that aspect. Now we'll transition over to CARSA Coalition. And are we going to have Charla or Nicole speak, or both?
Oh, you're gonna have Nicole.
Yay!
Okay, good, can you hear me? Okay, so, our status, so we have, not conducted our groups yet, but we now have, both of the youth scheduled and one of the adult sessions scheduled. For our youth, we are utilizing our partners with the schools, and I guess I'm kind of like jumping around staffing. So Charlotte and I will be conducting the sessions, and we may or may not include a coalition member as a third sit-in. We haven't really made a definitive decision on that yet. We just talked about this today at our coalition meeting. So our adult recruitment, we outreach to a local church, and the members in the church, and that is the one that we don't have scheduled yet, but they're going to talk about it this Sunday. and see if they have some group or some parishioners that can't think of the word, that would be interested in participating. And for that one, we would be we're gonna think about doing like a community dinner for that one. And then our other outreach was to the YMCA, which is a great community partner of ours, and we have scheduled for January 8th in the evening for our listening session out there. And for that one, we are going to probably be doing the incentive of gift cards. Like I said, with the youth recruitment, we're utilizing our school partners and have those scheduled for January 8th during over their lunch hour. And then the students who participate will extend their lunch a little bit, and their teachers are being notified. And then also on January 9th are those. Key successes, the 2 youth focus groups are scheduled. We've had positive response from our coalition and partners and different members, and we were just really excited to get those scheduled. And it wasn't, I think, as difficult as we maybe thought. They were right away on board, and I think within the same day that we outreached, we had a date scheduled and a plan. And for them, we are going to be providing pizza and probably some sort of drink. And let's see, what else do we want to share? We're looking forward to hearing the feedback from these groups. I think we were really surprised. The feedback we got after we conducted the community readiness assessment. So I think we're really excited to see what kind of feedback we get. I know I'm really excited to hear the feedback from the youth because I think they're most often not heard or asked. So I'm really excited to hear what they have to say. Questions from our peers. If you've already conducted a focus group, did you have any challenges? And so far, I don't think anyone's actually conducted them, unless someone in the future has. And questions for OSET and OCAN. I don't think we have any at this time. We had our site visit last week, so we asked some questions then.
Great, thank you. And you talked about the positive response from your coalition members. Can you share any more about that and what that, what their kind of response was more specifically?
Sure, Charlotte's going to jump in here. I would say it's just stepping up and opening up their facility like a YMCA and working kind of in the background to do planning for us. When you talk about capacity, that's what you're looking at. We don't have the capacity to do everything, but our partners do. And working with the community YMCA to look at schedules, to look at rooms, to look at meetings that are taking place there already, or parents, kind of doing that background work. So very positive. And then on the other end of that, working with the church to obtain dates and times and availability of their members too. So just kind of stepping up and doing those things that partners do, but you know, just very positive about it. You know, willing to help out with it.
I thought it was really neat too. The YMCA, they helped us identify like the day that is busiest, that parents bring children for like activities or games or practices, because we kind of thought, well, if we can catch them on a day they're already bringing their kids and they have about an hour to kill anyway. So they helped us figure out which day of the week was most parents are there and kind of lingering around waiting for kids. So that was a really big help too.
Yeah, building audiences are such an important piece, and I think that will really be a successful strategy for you. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks.
And moving on to Mercer County. And Amy, will you be sharing your report out?
This is Laura, actually.
Or Laura, okay.
Yeah, so we haven't scheduled anything as of yet. We do have some coalition members interested as far as the staffing.
as recruitment strategies, we're having a hard, like, we feel like we're at like a standstill as far as our coalition goes. And like we've done a lot of outreaches, like the fair and the parade and stuff like that. But we're just not getting the people. So we decided, just at our meeting on Monday, that we're gonna host an open house, in January, and invite like the people who donated to, different aspects of our coalition and kind of make it like an appreciation / open house event, like just if we're gonna have like different booths of different things that we're doing, and they can enter in door prizes, stuff like that, just to kind of make it more of like a fun thing. And ideally, on their way out, we would get some interest from the organization of helping with the coalition. So that's kind of our plan there. And we also, on January 8th, we're meeting with the sheriff with our youth-led prevention group, and their parents are invited to that as well. So we were thinking about maybe our focus groups like before we meet with some of the parents before we meet with the sheriff. Hopefully some of them would already be there anyway. And we're going to be doing snacks and beverages. We had our site visit yesterday, and they have suggested a gift card as well, especially for students, instead of just doing so. We're looking to have one middle school group and one high school group, and separating the age groups because we think that they'll be more open to sharing if they're not with each other. And we're hoping to utilize Parkway schools. They're very accepting, I guess, of prevention education, and we have really good rapport with them right now. That's not our key success yet, but that is what we're going to hopefully be using. But yeah, we're hoping to do that during lunch. And as far as the adults, those are our two ideas for the adults about. Sorry, one idea so far with these parents, and the other we have to figure out another one for the parents as well. What else do we want to share? Can't really think of anything at this point. The questions that people had for their peers have been really good so far, so I would agree with a lot of those. Like what are some challenges that you come along with so that we can hopefully avoid them? We just met with we just had our site visit yesterday, so we got some questions answered. So I think that's it for that.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And I think when you look at just coalition development, there's areas where there's a little bit of stagnation kind of at all coalitions. So there's definitely ebbs and flows in the process. And I think you've got a good plan of really looking forward to build out those that have provided support, whether it be through the work that they've done or through financial support, and really support them and really showcase what you're working on. So I think that will hopefully be successful in engaging some additional buy-in, and we'll be excited to see how that process moves along. Now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
For like a key success is we have our radio station is super supportive of anything prevention related. So we actually ask them to be live at the open house and like advertise it prior to. So hopefully that'll help as well. I'm pretty sure we got a yes on that yesterday. But so it's just something we're trying to utilize in the media because it's highly followed on Facebook. Very, very popular the way it is, so it's good to have them there to help bring more people.
Yeah, bring more people to the event, and for those that aren't able to attend, they can also hear about it, so they kind of virtually attend. Yeah, that'll be very helpful.
Thank you.
Now we'll transition over to Leanne in Coshocton. Leanne, do you want to talk about the work that you've done?
Leanne had to leave unexpectedly, so.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll pop on over to Frank. Frank, you want to talk a little bit about Carroll County? Oops.
Hi. So sorry for not getting my slide in on time. I sent it at 9:30 last night. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we
Yes?
sure can, thank you.
Yes, go right ahead, Frank. Thank you.
Okay. So we are still working, thinking on scheduling focus groups. I actually took the information to the table at last month's meeting, and we talked about how we would go about doing this. Consensus was we wanted all 3 school districts to be involved, so we decided to approach each school individually. So we set up interviews with each of our schools, which began on Monday the 4th. I had a meeting with principals, superintendent, school counselors with Brown Local School District. They have no problem with identifying parents and students for us. We're going to identify like 3 to 4 students from each grade and see, what kind of participation we can get. And they're also going to try and identify parents. But I've got a focus for a work group scheduled with them on the 21st of December to see where they're at and, get a date pounded out for, when we're actually going to have the listening sessions. So yesterday I met with Cotton Valley. They have no problem recruiting adults and youth. We've already scheduled a youth listening session for January 23rd. I am going to meet with them again on the 20th to see where they're at with parents, so that we can, get a date pounded out for that. Friday, I'm meeting with Carrollton School District, principal, superintendent, school nurse, counselor, and we're going to request the same of them to identify parents and youth. We're going to be giving incentive to parents, and we've got a couple people from the coalition right now working on some in-kind gift bags for the youth, and then we plan on giving them pizza. I'd say our key successes right now are each of the school districts have been, really welcoming and willing to host the focus groups at their schools. The other things I'd like to share is the 2 schools that I met with already have signed MOUs for future data gathering, and they seem to be really excited about these listening sessions and what the outcomes of that will be, and they would like us to share that information with them when we get it. Questions for peers. The only one I came up with was after we started this webinar. I guess that would be for Jody, and it's, do we need to do a budget revision, to do all 6 of these groups, because we're actually attempting to do 6 groups instead of just 4, 3 with youth and 3 with parents, so that we can have all 3 school districts involved.
Thanks, Frank. And can you talk a little bit about the schools? You said that they're interested in hearing the results of the focus groups. Who within the school are you working with? And did they talk any more about what they would like to do after they receive the results?
Well, actually, what brought that about was, I kind of walked them through what we've done from, our the CRA process, CLIR, data submission, COMS data submission, creating a baseline so that when we, gather this information, we can actually see where we're at. That way, when we gather information again, we can see movement that's been made. And when they hear data and baseline and movement, they get excited. So they're just saying that they're on board to do this. They're going to make it happen with us, and they would like us to share the outcomes of that with them.
Fantastic. Participation and engagement will be important for this step, but also, as you had mentioned, data collection and so many other pieces. So I think that's great. Now we're going to transition over to Wayne County, and I apologize, I had my pages out of order, so I jumped over you all for a moment. So we'll finish our assessments today, or our conversations today with Wayne County and then with Holmes County. And Kathy, are you going to speak on behalf of Wayne?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Okay, so our county impact group has the focus groups scheduled, but they haven't happened. But by the end of December, our last one's the 28th, we will have them all completed. We're staffing the focus groups through a call out to our group, and we got 4 people who jumped in to say they'd be co-facilitators. Let's see, adult recruitment strategies. We're holding a focus group through our agency, which is a staff of around 80 people, and we got the okay from our executive director to hold it during work hours, and the staff will get lunch and an incentive card. Youth recruitment strategies, we're working through youth leaders at the schools, and we focused on 8th graders in one group and 10th graders in another. And part of that was the thinking of the transcription that we didn't want 8th, 9th, and 10th, because then if the 9th graders had different perception or whatever, the transcriptionist might not know at the time who the kids were and what grades they were in. So we tried to streamline that. Key successes, we felt just getting them on the calendar with the holidays coming up. What else do I want to share? A little bit of facilitation jitters, since I haven't done a focus group before, of how to keep on track with the time, because we've scheduled it for an hour, because people are busy, the students have limited time as well. So we want to know a little bit more about pacing ourselves, and also the role of co-facilitators, since we've already asked them to participate. What else besides being in the room and helping us with any issues that come up at the time are they supposed to do? That's it.
Those are some great questions, and I think that pacing is, remember that the conversation is going to ebb and flow, and as a facilitator, don't feel compelled to have each person respond to each question, because you're not really losing data. You want to make sure that you are getting multiple perspectives and you're drawing in those who may be quiet. But remember, the purpose of qualitative interviewing is not like just a survey, and that's where we find that people get into trouble when they expect every person to answer the question. So think about our mock focus group and think about how we let the conversation ebb and flow. When we seem to hear the same thing from a couple of people, then we just moved on to the next question. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And then the role of the co-facilitator, of course, is very important for support that day, but we'll also talk about in basic data analysis some things that your co-facilitator can do. So that's a great segue into our next section as well.
Thank you. And just looking at the comments, Tracy said, please send me your success stories. These are great. And then Frank wanted to add into his report out that he wanted to also add that they're recruiting their facilitators from outside of their community, I believe, much like the Tuscarawas is. And Don says, PD's kudos on this conversation. So thank you all. And last but certainly not least, we'll have Holmes County talk about Sparks Holmes County with Jay Gregg.
Good morning, everyone. All right, our status right now, like had been mentioned before, we're having our school counselor, who's the head of our education committee, our school committee, our two Holmes County Schools committee, to lead the search for participants through those school channels. And her name's Dawn O'Donnell. She's very confident she can find over at West Holmes participants, both adult and youth, 7th, 9th, and 11th graders to represent, and as well as the adults to represent would be ideally adults who are parents of or family of 7th, 9th, and 11th graders. And so she's communicating with our school in the East as well to coordinate those searches, those recruitment efforts. So those adult and youth strategies are similar. We hope that that Plan A will work. We'll know this week if things have been successful. We definitely hope to have the youth session before school lets out for winter break, as that last week tends to be, youth aren't as, or the students aren't as busy as they might be during the January, so it would give them something, a good thing to do during that week. We hope to have the adult session right after the first of the year. And staffing the focus groups, I skipped over that. Right now, our idea is to have our own agency, either a therapist or an adult case manager or a youth case manager, facilitate those conversations. Definitely lead, perhaps not co-facilitate, but I would not be present. We've decided that my presence or any school staff member or someone might sway or bias the conversations in a way that we don't want. So we've are thinking about then having agency. Of course, our agency is stepping up to that first, but we may not just use ours. We may offer that also to another one of our coalition agency partners or someone similar, perhaps even our FCFC coordinator who's sitting with me and smiling. She may be involved in that as well. Suffice to say, somebody that the students don't or the parents are probably not familiar with. Key successes here, then, what I've learned in this process is, I think everybody knows this or is doing this well, that you can't have sort of just a few people doing these tasks that we have to do. I found that Dawn O'Donnell has been a great go-getter for us, and so I'm very happy to be able to rely on her to get things going and to support her and to help her do what she's good at doing, just connecting to people throughout Holmes County, especially when it comes to school activities. Well, of course, just wanted to share that at the time I wrote, I am concerned about getting things done before break, and certainly at our site visit we had a conversation about making sure that we're communicating every day on the progress for this, and so that was good advice, and it's being taken. One question, I would just change my question actually, instead of just this broad question about challenges. may I just revise that to ask what incentive type of gift card would be appropriate for youth? My mind wants to go to iTunes, but of course you could purchase songs with explicit content on them or other things like that. And so I want to just put that out there. If anyone wants to type those in, what they've thought of is, if they're using gift cards, what gift cards would be most appropriate for youth. We're going with grocery cards for our adults. I don't believe that will incentivize the youth as well. So they do eat, they're not excited about getting, so any McDonald's, yeah, I see that. CVS, okay. Thank you for entering those in. And for our OSET and OCAM guidance, where should we be with this right now? I think I'm hearing, and certainly after the site visit, I think we're, I hear you loud and clear on where we should be on things. So I think those questions have been answered, and I don't have anything further to add.
Great, thank you. Thank you, J. Greg. And as folks are thinking about their strategies for incentivizing, if you could drop those into the chat box. We see McDonald's, CVS, Subway, Jitter's Coffee Shop, Starbucks, and Starbucks if it's local. And feel free to continue to drop that in. And thank you all so much for your participation in what you've done so far and submitting the slides in advance, and of course speaking today. And with that, I'll turn things over to Holly, but please continue to drop those incentive places in so we can continue to share.
Thank you so much, Derek, for facilitating. I appreciate that. And thank you so much for our project directors for offering a lot of insight that was tucked into your slides. So I think we had a good time of sharing and able to learn from one another. I'm here today to talk to you about data analysis, and I've received several emails from you that say, how long are we going to need to do our data analysis? How many days should we plan? I know a lot of you are working really hard at doing Gantt charts and time charts. So today I hope to give you the very first part of data analysis. Dr. April Schweinhardt from Hire, whom you all met at our last session, did a lot of the content, and then she's in Chicago on vacation this week. So I get to be the one to present, but I definitely did want to honor her work. We envision this section to be a three-part section. Today we will give you part one, and that is the immediate data analysis task that you will have to do. And then parts 2 and 3 will be designed to be delivered asynchronously, meaning they will be up on the SPF PFS website, and you'll be able to access them as you need them. So when you're ready for step 2, you can go ahead and watch the videos for step 2. Everything will be posted before the holiday by December 22nd. So that's when we hope to have all the materials up so that you all can stay on schedule, because we know that January is your work month. So I have several learning objectives here today, and again, these are basically the gist of what we're doing is get a basic understanding of qualitative research analysis and what are those immediate next steps following your focus groups or group interviews or whatever you want to call them to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success to analyze your data. The next slide shows the steps to planning focus groups. We've covered a lot, conceptualization, design, we've talked about recruitment, the protocol has been already developed. You are working on your moderation and actually having the focus groups. Now we're focusing on data analysis, and then of course that last webinar in our 3-step webinar will be on our reporting. The steps that are highlighted in red were steps that we completed for you as an OSET team to sort of expedite the process. But we're hoping that you being through the process, kind of coming through the middle of the movie, will also help you see how you're able to write your own interview guides moving forward. So we do think that at the end of the SPF PFS experience, what we hope is that you will have the capacity as a coalition to do your own focus groups from scratch. This is just a review to talk about why we are doing our focus group. We know we have our problem of practice. For each problem of practice, we have those intervening variables. And once we identify those intervening variables, we have to figure out what in our community is impacting that intervening variable to cause it to be a precursor to use, whether we're talking about using alcohol or whether we're talking about using or misusing prescription drugs. So our focus is really thinking about what are the ways we can utilize the data and information that we cull from our focus groups to help us figure out that local context. And the reason the local context is so important is because that's what drives our strategy selection. That is truly the heart of the strategic prevention framework. We can look at the strategic prevention framework as a flower, we can talk about all those discrete steps, but the reality is the strategic prevention framework is a data-driven process which allows us to determine what local conditions are impacting our problems and practices, and that sets us up to choose strategies that are the right strategy at the right time that are culturally relevant for our communities so that we can create community-level change. So the purpose of data analysis is not just describing the local context, but also trying to figure out how to explain why things are happening the way they're happening or why you're seeing things manifest in your community the way you are. It helps determine how the community is going to respond to those changing conditions. And sometimes the data doesn't tell the full story, and that's why we recommend using a mixed method or supporting that data with a qualitative data of focus groups. Because you can look at the data and you can follow the numbers all you want, and our highly quantitative people truly believe that tells the story, but I think we need to know, as Paul Harvey says on NPR, the rest of the story. And that's what your qualitative data is going to add value to. When we analyze our qualitative data, the first thing we have to understand is that qualitative data analysis is iterative. It is not like a quantitative analysis when you put in everything into your Excel package or whatever data package you're using and you run the frequencies, you see it, and you're done. Every time you read and review your scripts, every time you come and sit down, you're probably going to get another idea. You're probably going to see it differently. You're probably going to talk to someone and then see something a different way, and that's okay. Qualitative data analysis is an iterative process, and that's why you have the opportunity to do those 4 group interviews so you can iterate through the data so you can better understand your local context. Qualitative data analysis is also highly process-oriented. You'll move through several stages of data analysis, and you will know when you're moving into that next stage. You'll know when, oh, I really have a good understanding of this research question, I need to move on to the next one. So things will crystallize along the way, and you'll feel yourself moving through stages. This isn't something where we can actually map out and say, after 2 hours you'll feel here, or after 3 hours you'll feel here. What it is just a process, and those stages are milestones, if you will. You will feel it as you go through. Qualitative data analysis is always continually happening. Data collection and analysis are interrelated. You'll be analyzing your data actually during your focus group while you're conducting it, because that's going to help you ask those probe or follow-up questions or clarifications from your participants. Also, information from your first group should inform your next group. So if you hear something that comes up in your first group and it doesn't come up in your second group, you might want to test the waters a little bit and ask a probing question there. So it's really important to debrief. I saw where many of you were looking at having different facilitators, and that's completely okay, but having a team debrief, even if people who weren't there, is important, because you want to make sure that there is some connection between your first and second focus groups. The idea of qualitative data analysis is called constantly comparing, or constant comparative analysis. You're constantly comparing one incident or idea to another. Okay, I'm hearing this here, am I hearing it there? Oh, I'm hearing this is a reason why drinking is occurring here, but it's not occurring there. So you're constantly comparing people's behaviors over time, in different contexts, in different relationships with others, It's just information gathering. And in fact, there is a qualitative data analysis method called the constant comparative method. I'm going to pause here to see if we have any questions so far about qualitative data analysis. Looks like we're good. So qualitative data analysis, for people who particularly are those strong quantitative, they say, oh, it's biased, it's inaccurate, you're just getting data from a small amount of people. Qualitative data analysis can be rigorous, and it should be rigorous. And we are setting you up to do the most rigorous qualitative data analysis possible. Your data collection methods are rigorous. How we set up your scripts with the guiding questions, and then the interview questions you actually ask your participants is rigorous. We just have a different language to support qualitative data analysis than we do quantitative data analysis, and the words are a little bit different. You hear words in quantitative data analysis like reliability and validity and bias. We have a totally different language for qualitative data, and you have to understand that you have to keep those thoughts separate, right? You're comparing apples to oranges. Just like quantitative data analysis can be not reliable and not trustworthy, qualitative data analysis can be the same thing. It's kind of like the jump in and jump out. So what I'd like to do is just take a moment to tell you about how we can keep our data analysis as rigorous as possible. What we know is that a good qualitative data analysis should be transferable. That means it extends beyond the participants in your focus group. And you know that because you're giving people an opportunity to speak. You're hearing things more than once, right? You're hearing things maybe across the two groups. That's why we changed and said, you know what, we want you to do 2 groups with adults and 2 groups with youth. Because if you're hearing the same ideas in both groups, then it's highly likely that what you're hearing in your groups is probably going to transfer or extend beyond the participants in focus group. We also want to make sure that the information we're culling from our focus groups is consistent. And that's why checking and comparing your data is key. You want to make sure that if I'm hearing this theme, is it consistently within both focus groups? Is it consistent among the participants in the focus groups? Or is it just, a single idea that maybe one person has that no one else shares? You are going to have to check and confirm that constantly as you analyze your data. We also know that qualitative data analysis should be dependable. And that means someone conducting a similar strategy in a similar community should find similar results, right? And that doesn't mean the exact results, but what we're saying is that this process that we're doing is standardized. All of our SPF PFS communities are doing the same protocols, the same ways in their community. And so we know that there's a lot of rigor in our data analysis because not only are you repeating the process once within your own community, so you're doing one with child, one with youth, but also your sister communities and brother communities across the SPF PFS are doing them as well in the same way. So we know that this analysis process is really set up to be a rigorous, trustworthy process. Qualitative data analysis should also be authentic. So categories should only be made with like phenomenon. That means when you get to the step where you're theming or kind of finding those main ideas in your data, you're really honest with yourself. And you're really honest with anyone who co-analyzes the data with you. Are you really grouping things together appropriately and finding themes, or are you doing a needs confirmation? In qualitative data analysis, the researcher is the instrument. So you really have to check your own bias at the door. If you really have a heart and you want to do a certain campaign or you really want to do a certain strategy and you're trying to fit your data so you can do what you want to do, it is not an authentic process. You have to let the data guide the information about your local condition. You want to make sure that you're going into this, and anyone else who analyzes the data going into this is going into it with the mindset that we are going to use this data to then identify our best intervention, not We're going into this analysis with an intervention, and we're going to try to justify it with the data that we have. And again, the only person who can check that is yourself, and you have to be truly authentic with what you bring to the table. Finally, it has to be confirmable and credible. Your data should back up any of your conclusions. You should have data to point to why you're coming up with, this is what's going on, here's our local conditions, here's why, here's what people are telling us. You should have data to drive that, and if your data drive that, then it should be credible and be an accurate representation. So these are at the heart of qualitative data analysis, are what keep it rigorous and what keep it trustworthy as a process for your community. So I'm going to pause for just a second. You've heard a little bit about what qualitative data analysis is and what it should be and how it is intended to be a rigorous process for all of us. Feel free to unmute your phones if you have any questions or concerns or ideas, or type them in the chat box. I don't see anything. So it seems like we have a shared understanding in the basic foundation of qualitative research. So let's actually get into the steps or stages and what we would like you to do. So step one. Step one, these are suggestions for you for immediately after the group. Immediately after the group, what we suggest is that either you or your moderator draw a diagram of the seating arrangement and note key characteristics of the participants. If you are a visual learner, this can be really helpful for you when you analyze the data, because as you read people's responses, you're going to be able to go back to that room in your mind and be able to figure out, oh yeah, I remember when that person said that and that person played off of that comment. That will help make your data analysis more credible because it will almost pull you there, particularly for those visual learners. The assistant moderator and the moderator should debrief after the session, noting any themes, hunches, and ideas, and knowing that this is sort of just your initial impression. It may or may not be what's in your final analysis, but when you have that initial debrief, keep all of your initial thoughts, right? Just jot them down in a notebook and have that time so you can discuss, here's what we're thinking, here's where we're going with it, here's what we think we need to ask in that next group interview. If it is your second interview, or even if you're comparing across young people and your adult focus groups, compare and contrast the group with others that have already been conducted. That will help you know and say, you know what, that person, she just kind of went off on that tangent, and while it was interesting, we haven't heard that in any of the other 3 focus groups. Your initial impressions are important, and they need to make sure that you are jotting down your notes so you don't forget them. Remember, your detail and your memory can be lost with any delay in debriefing. Here at the OhioMHAS School, we conduct our group interviews. We're kind of fortunate that we're in the rural and Appalachian area because it usually means we have to drive places. So it means we have that time in the car to debrief on the way home. And that we use that time, and it's really helpful. So obviously the driver's not taking notes, but the passenger is the one who is taking a lot of notes to helping you move forward. On the next slide, I have an example diagram, and actually April did this right after she conducted the mock focus group. So you may see some notes in there if you were in April's group. Her initial impressions were law enforcement isn't helpful, parents need more education, some of the parents actually contribute to the problem. And then you can see down in the bottom, whoever was the silent person, that's where you were sitting. And then someone who disclosed, well, my brother just drinks before school, right? And then you had the party throwing blonde. So not quite sure what that means because I was in a different focus group, but I think you could get the idea of how a diagram can be really helpful. And having your assistant moderator do that diagram and then adding to it when you have discourse after the focus group can really make your analysis richer. So I'm going to pause for a minute and ask if we have any questions about that initial analysis phase, which occurs right after that group. Don Thomas says, I think the diagram is a great idea. I'm a visual person, so it's really helpful for me. The other folks are typing, so we'll give them a minute. Stacy Loughlin says, I have been called a lot of things, but a lawn party thrower is a new one. That must have been where you were sitting, Stacy. And Nicole Schisler must have also seen this focus group because she's laughing at the brother comment for air quotes, Kathy. Dawn, it sounds like you're speaking from experience, and she's saying, I learned the hard way, so please try to take some time and do notes immediately after a focus group. Yes, both focus groups should get an Academy Award, the one I was sitting in as well. So, and Frank added rigorous. Yes, that's what we want to be able to communicate to our community. Unfortunately, quantitative data is oftentimes privileged in the process because people say numbers don't lie. As someone who's been in research and evaluation for a really long time, I've seen really good quantitative studies, I've seen really bad ones, and the same thing goes for qualitative. I've seen really good ones and really bad ones as well. But if you can learn the language of qualitative research and say, you know what, we're not going to follow and use our qualitative data as outcomes, but we're going to see is how can we take the quantitative data and understand the story behind it. And if I could give you anything in this session, would be the language to say that qualitative data helps us understand what those statistics are telling us, right? And it's really important to have that understanding so you know what those levers are in your community so that you can make the right choice when you're choosing intervention. Qualitative data is used to support and dig that one level deeper or peel the onion back. Because trust me, you will have a few naysayers on your coalition. Why are we doing this? We're just hearing from a few people, but I think you'll find it tremendously valuable, just like the community readiness assessments were valuable. Okay, if there's nothing else, then we'll move on to step 2. Thanks for all of you who stepped in. I appreciate that. So step 2, this comes as soon as your group is transcribed. Remember that transcription is most helpful if you have a quick turnaround time. So once you do one group, go ahead and get that sent off to your transcriptionist so they can be working on it, even as you're conducting your next group. There's no rule that says you have to conduct all 4 of your groups and then send them to the transcriptionist. So whatever you work out in your contract with your transcriptionist is up to you. But how we typically do ours is we just turn them in as they are complete. So we get them back usually faster, and it also helps us as we read through them and get stronger in our interview techniques. So as soon as your group is transcribed, the assistant moderator and moderator come back together. Review any notes, fill in any gaps, do a thorough read of your transcript, fully recognizing that the analysis starts the moment you start reading it. Your transcriptions will likely come back with gaps, perhaps more gaps than you're used to seeing because they are group interviews. So you'll have people who kind of interrupt and cut in one another, and sometimes it's difficult for the transcriptionist to tell you where one person ends and another person starts. And so that's why having that diagram and having your assistant moderator there will help you sort through the transcripts. It will also help you kind of go back and remember and say, okay, this is the same person. You can like highlight them if you want to figure that out or not. It doesn't matter. There's many different techniques, but have conversations over that transcript with your assistant moderator. What you want to do then is prepare a brief report of this group in a question-by-question format. And so it's almost like look at all of your questions and make sure that you have all of the data kind of organized and aligned. Sometimes focus groups can go forward and backwards, or someone say, hey, I want to go back to that question before. And if you had that happen, go ahead and sort that data through cut and paste in your Word document. So you do have things sorted. That can be a useful technique there. This is also a time for you and your assistant moderator to identify things that went well and what can be improved. It's also a time if you have another team going in to do another focus group to come together as perhaps 4 of you. So if you have whoever's going to moderate and assistant moderate the second one. So you can talk about the transcript, talk about, oh, you can see in the transcript where this person went on and on and on and on and on, and I didn't know how to make them stop about this unrelated topic, and then discuss some strategies for how you can address situations like that moving forward. It's a great learning experience in this step 2. What questions do we have so far about step 2? I see some people typing, Trish and Kathy. Is there an example of a brief report that we can model ours after? I don't have one particularly on this topic. All the ones I have would be protected under human subjects protection, so I can't really give you a template. I think you'll have to develop your own style, and that's what's tricky about qualitative data analysis is your brief report is almost just your kind of initial reactions. It could be for some, it could be just sketchy ideas written out, but it's more of a brief saying, this is what happened at the focus group, this is what we're seeing, and this is what we need to move on. What's going to be useful, Trish, to you and Kathy, may be very different than what's useful for Frank, so you have to decide what the goals are of your brief report, and then how to move forward from there. Others? Okay. On the next slide, this is where you really need to prepare those transcripts for the full analysis. So we've moved now from initial impressions to actually analyzing your data. One of the first steps is really fill in the blanks. So you're going to find things through your initial read-through that are missing from the transcriptionist. What I like to do is read through the transcripts while listening to the tape. And again, that helps bring me back right to that moment. So I'm sitting there, picture me sitting there with my headset on, the transcript in front of me, I have my diagram in front of me, and it's really bringing me back to that focus group. This helps me delineate and maybe label speakers so I can work at my transcript and actually name them or number them or whatever. That helps me know if I have someone who is talking a lot and I don't want to overweigh their opinion. I also can put in some extra spaces if I have more than one comment, kind of things putting together. So if Nicole is talking and then Katie's talking and they kind of come together as one person, I can kind of space that out a little bit different. Reading the transcript multiple times is a start to data analysis. And I think that is really going to be useful for you. I know all of you have experience with reading transcripts, or most of you do with the community readiness assessment, but that was a single person. Focus groups are a little bit different, and so how you're going to handle those multiple voices is important. And I also want to stress to you, as someone who has taught qualitative research methods for a number of years, is that everybody really develops their own style, and they don't know how they're going to react, like to writing a brief report, or if they need a formal brief report, or if they can just have ideas written down. You don't know how you're going to react until you start actually doing the data analysis. And when you actually start doing it, is where you develop your own style. So as Don Thomas likes to say, trust the process. Just trust the process and ask lots of questions. Lots of questions. So step 3 in qualitative data analysis is where you begin to draw your initial findings in a linear process. You begin to figure out those distinctions between groups. What are my young people saying? What are my adults saying? What are some themes that we see? We want to be open to new and changing information. We want to see, hey, what are we seeing in terms of emerging themes? So alcohol use, we're hearing parents, and that seems to be weighted heavily in the parents. They're saying, people in my neighborhood are hosting parties, and we hear young people saying it's parents. So that could be a theme that emerges overall. Or in prescription drug misuse, we could hear people saying, over and over again about access to those prescription drugs. I get it from here, I get it from there. And so What you're starting to do now is look for those themes and then describe findings and use quotes to illustrate the key points. So you always want to pull out those quotes. So if I'm finding themes, what are those quotes that are going to justify those themes, right? And so now in my mind, I have multiple documents open, I'm pulling things out, I'm kind of coming up with it. Maybe I have how I work is I do one theme per Word document, and then I kind of pull over the quotes into that document by cutting and pasting, which helps me look at the data that I have that back up each theme. At the same time I'm doing that, I'm trying to make sure, well, is that the same person that's talking about that all the time, or do I have multiple people who feel that that same theme is actually at play? It's always a good idea is to have your assistant moderator involved in this process, because they are going to be very, very helpful during this stage. They act as your double check. It's also important to know that the time spent on each question could diminish. You could think that, we didn't really talk about parents in the second focus group, but it could be because you as a moderator already had in your head, oh, I know parents are the problem. Parents are not locking up the prescription drug, or parents are providing alcohol. So you tend to excuse it and move it on from it in your subsequent focus groups. If you're seeing that, you need to make sure that you really read through your data and check your own personal biases to make sure you're not looking for a needs confirmation instead of a needs assessment. So that's an important double check to do there. I'm going to move on because I think what's really important is to think about how we use our guiding questions to connect the dots. And this slide was one that you've seen before, and we know that, if we move on to the next one, we had our intervening variables. So for example, percent of parents reporting that they have talked to their child at least once. So that would be the fourth one down in the first column. We have a guiding question. What is the tone, demeanor, and perceived effectiveness of these conversations? How can these conversations be made more meaningful, impactful for families? That's the question we really want to answer. The interview question we asked was, how would you communicate your perception of underage drinking to your child? You may get information about the tone, demeanor, and perceived effectiveness of conversations throughout your interview. It's very important that you remember that we have our guiding questions, and then we also have our interview questions. One common error that novice qualitative researchers make is they will take their interview question, so in this case, how would you communicate your perception of underage drinking to your child? And then they call all the responses to that question and try to come up with an average because they're putting that quantitative mindset. I need to figure that out. Okay? The truth is that you're really more interested in your guiding questions than you are your interview questions. I actually suggest to my students sometimes that they block out the interview questions in their transcripts. And when they read them to connect the dots, they read through them thinking just from the perspective of the guiding question. So, okay, I'm going to read through this thinking through what is the tone, demeanor, perceived effectiveness of these conversations, how can these conversations be made more meaningful, and I'm going to read the entire interview script with just those guiding questions in mind. You'll oftentimes find that you have more data than you actually think. The interview questions are just your way to elicit responses. You really want to be able to answer at the end of the day with your data the guiding questions. So another example is in the first row. How do young people form their perceptions of parental permissiveness or disapproval regarding underage drinking? What cues do they follow to know that their parents are more restrictive with alcohol? We asked a very specific question. Now let's talk about how your parents talk to you about drinking alcohol. Do you have these kinds of conversations with your parents? How do your parents talk with you about drinking alcohol? You can see where those interview questions that we aligned with survey measure number 1 could also actually align well with the one we just discussed. Parents reporting that they've talked to their child at least once, right? So you're going to get multiple data at multiple points and be able to pull it into your guiding questions, and that's okay. At some point, if you're getting kind of stuck on looking at an interview question by interview question, and by that I mean the questions you actually asked your participants, go ahead and make a draft of your transcript in Word where you take out your interview question and you just focus on your guiding questions. What thoughts, questions, concerns do we have about separating our guiding questions from our interview questions? And again, it's really hard with qualitative research, or really any type of research, to be able to think about how you're going to analyze it without actually seeing your data. So if you're sitting there with your partner, or you're sitting there looking at your computer, feeling overwhelmed, that is completely normal. I promise you, once you have your data and your transcripts, and once you've conducted your group interviews or your focus groups, this will all make sense to you. And that's why you made the decision to kind of talk with you today about these basic first steps. And then when you're ready, you can go on to the next webinar and learn how to analyze a little bit deeper. And then the third webinar to learn how to report your findings. The other thing to remember is that we're a learning community, and you're all going to learn from one another, and you'll have that opportunity to do that. Pick up the phone and call. Okay, we have the phone list. We have contact information on the website. So call your fellow PDs. Ask them what their lessons learned are. Ask them how they are analyzing their data. You also have your OCAM coach, and you also have your evaluator. But it's very common, and as someone who teaches qualitative research every spring semester for the last, I don't know how many years, people are always walk out from this unit thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to do it, and then they all end up with amazing projects. I've also worked with many SPF project directors who did interviews, and they were able to do it too. So I know that all of you will be able to move forward. So just as a review, on the next slide, we have 4 guiding questions for use under prescription drugs and 4 under alcohol. These are the questions we hope to answer with all of the information from the group interviews and focus groups. Okay, these are the ones to keep in mind as you move to that connecting the dots stage. And then on the next slide, we have the adult ones. You will see that the guiding questions are really in alignment for adults and youth. And that was done on purpose because we want to hear what adults say about the same thing as youth. Because adult and youth perceptions are important because we may have to do an adult intervention in our community. We may also have to do a youth intervention. And that's probably likely going to be the case. Because the purpose, again, of this is we'll identify what are the priorities in our community in terms of our intervening variables, and then what about those intervening variables or local context do we want to change? And it could be an adult issue, it could be a youth issue, or it could be a both issue that we need to work on, but the strategy we use likely will be a little bit different for adults and youth. I can't say this enough that in qualitative research, multiple reviewers are important. Multiple reviewers can be used in different ways. Each reviewer reads his transcripts for each question, so that meaning that we go back to our guiding questions and we have everybody kind of get their own impressions for each guiding question. We come together and share and have a conversation. For some people that's too much, or they say, you know what, the people I have full-time jobs, but they still want to be involved. Well, then they can read a transcript for just one of your guiding questions, and you can divvy it up that way. Either way, have multiple people read through multiple times because you'll find multiple things, right? And then when you come down into that room to decide, You know, what are the local conditions? What, if we have to answer that guiding question, how are we going to answer it together? Discrepancies among your reviewers can be discussed and worked through. This process enhances the credibility and authenticity of your work. So you can sort of imagine, if we can flip back to the guiding questions, you're sitting in a room, everyone's reviewed their transcripts. Either I've reviewed, let's say I've done prescription drugs as my problem of practice, and I looked at my youth interviews. I have a response on how I would answer the question for all four. And then Nicole Schisler has read the same data, and she has how she would respond to all four. And then we'd have a conversation, and we would say, okay, what evidence do you have to come to your conclusion? What evidence do I have to come to my conclusion? And then how together can we come to a conclusion? Okay. Or you could have two people do guiding question 1, two different people do guiding question 2, two different people do guiding question 3, and so on and so forth. You have to determine the people in your coalition, what they have time for, what they have an interest in, and how they want to work on this. The key takeaway here is that this is not an individual project. This is a group project. And in all the qualitative projects that I've worked on here at the university as a professional and as an academic have all been group work. Advance back, please, Katie. Forward, sorry. So moving forward, do we have any questions so far on multiple reviewers or looking at guiding questions? See, Laura is typing. Kimberly is typing. Laura wants to know if she's going to leave. Will we send us the slides? The slides will be posted on the SPF website, Laura, as well as the recording. Can you remind us of when this process needs to be completed? So we were thinking that the end of January would be a good idea to have it complete, because in February we're going to talk about how to prioritize. However, each community kind of runs its own way. You see where people have not even scheduled their focus groups or are scheduling them into January. The goal is for you to have a completed strategic plan by the end of June, Kim. So it's kind of, you are where you're supposed to be in terms of your community, with that goal in mind that you're going to do some steps faster and slower than others. But our goal is for everyone to have a completed strategic plan by June 30th. Dawn, would you have anything else to add about deadlines?
The June 30th deadline is a hard deadline in terms of the strategic plan. So I know that a lot of you have been panicking a little bit about the listening sessions, but you're actually, I believe you all are in a good space. You've literally strategically thought about it. So at different times over the next 6 months, some of you are going to be a little bit more ahead and others will not be. But however, you all need to get to the same place, which is the strategic plan at the end by June. We cannot change that, alter that, but in between how you get there, you have a little bit of time. But think about the fact that the longer it takes you to do this, the longer it'll take you to get to the next process. So that's pretty much my feedback.
Derek, from a coaching perspective, what other suggestions would you have in terms of timeline and time management?
Well, I think just connect with your coaches, connect with your outside evaluators, and make sure you have a time plan. And June 30th is a hard deadline, but there's a lot of steps between here and June 30th. And not just thinking, oh, June's 7 months away, but really planning out what that's going to look like. So you can't be too prepared.
In addition, this is Dawn again, there are going to be steps that you all will submit to your OSET team, but there'll also be pieces that you will submit to other teams, advisory committees that are working. So you have to be very strategic in planning out your time, which is why we're really working with you now so that you can kind of understand all the steps that it takes to do these different pieces. So just keep that in mind. I know that a lot of our deadlines so far, you've sent things into OSET or you've sent things into your coaches. You will also be sending things to the EVP work group, and they will be approving and moving things forward based on your progress as well. So just allowing for that time management and project management is going to be really helpful to you. And just as an FYI, I spoke with Brittany from SPECA last night, and she mentioned to me that that is a topic of the January SPECA meeting is project management. So just thought I would add that as well.
Thank you, Dawn and Derek. Nicole Schisler, are you still on the line? Would you have any additional perspective to offer?
I would just encourage you in your action planning with your coalition to assign partners with different duties. So every time you're together or you're meeting in a work group or a monthly meeting, you're asking those individuals to give updates on their progress. So not everything falls to the project director because that's not the intent of a coalition. It's the community's work, so therefore involve the community.
Appreciate that, yes. And we hear that some of you say, we can't do this because our coalition doesn't meet until next month. It's figuring out a way to have small work groups or subcommittees who can do this body of work, who can work in between. Because relying on a once-a-month meeting is probably not going to get you where you need to be in terms of getting that strategic plan done by June 30th. Realizing that in a coalition, particularly if you have a large one, Stacy talked about having a large 100-person coalition. Not everybody is going to be part of everything, but there'll be key decision-making points where you'll want to have a broader involvement. So if you have people who really have a heart for youth focus groups and can get kind of running and come up with, doing the focus groups, analyzing the data, preparing the report, then that's great to have that as a committee, and then an adult focus group committee and so forth. Think about, and from a project management perspective, discuss with your evaluator and your coach some strategies you may want to use.
Holly, I would also add that the OSET, OCAM, and OhioMHAS, we all have access to webinar systems like this. So if you as a subrecipient want to use this kind of a resource to host those in between meetings, you're more than welcome. And it's a really nice way to guide conversation, obviously like today, but I do it sometimes just with one slide and, ask them for a half hour of their time just to hit some high points and check in.
Excellent, outstanding thoughts. So Dawn, of course, great idea, Nicole. This will help with multiple reviewers, exactly. Small work groups is the way to get there. And I would agree that all of our PDs are doing a good job of reaching out to OSET and OCAM. We are here to support you. Katie, if you could scroll up, I think we had one question that didn't get answered yet. Trish and Kathy, what documentation needs to be submitted before the January 30th deadline? That's a good question. So in the third webinar, you will generate a report, and this will be different because it won't be the typical report that you will put into the online system. It will be more of a report template that is a Word document. You'll know what you can modify and what you can't modify and how to put that in. The SCOW work group is meeting on Friday. Matt Corser and Laura Belliston are working with them. They are coming up with some of the questions and what they would like to see in that report. They've been actually working a couple of times. They've been having some exchanges. So once we have that information, we will get that third webinar up and running. Again, we know that we have a deadline, and our commitment to you is that we'll have all 3 webinars up by December 22nd. And that will include that report template. But I would look for it to be a 3 to 5 page report. It's kind of what it's looking like to me now, but I don't know. I guess we'll see after Friday. Other questions or thoughts? So step 4 of data analysis is called data transformation. And data transformation is a 3-stage process, and we call this moving from organization to meaning. And what you've done in our data steps 1 through 3 is really organize your data. Now we need to get it to the point where we've organized it, we have some initial thoughts about meaning. Now we need to really come down to what does this data mean. So stage 1 in this 3-stage process of step 4 is organizing data to provide an initial analytic framework. This is really description. So we really want to describe each of the local conditions that we're hearing relative to our guiding questions. This prepares us to move forward with data analysis, and it also ensures participants' voices remain in the data. So how do we describe this phenomenon that we're hearing? This is coding our guiding question. You've already come up with main themes and ideas that you have, and so let's say parents is one of your main themes. So you may go through and read your transcripts again and highlight anytime you see parental influence come up. You could copy and paste parental influence quotes into a separate document. I've seen it done both ways. So you can highlight by question, you can copy and paste into separate documents for questions. I've seen people print them out and cut out, because back in the day, it was like paste things onto index cards and then card sort. And that's still a technique I actually use sometimes when I'm really wrestling with data. There's many different strategies to code those guiding questions. Your ultimate goal here is to organize your participants' thoughts from all focus groups on each guiding question into a single document. So write your guiding question number 1 at the top, and then put all of your participants' thoughts from all focus groups on each guiding question. Here's the trick. You can't just start, with your transcript and then move each statement into one of the 4 and let it be in one of the 4. Because one person's statement may be, oh, I see a little bit of guiding question 1 and 2 in this, right? So you have to be really careful that you're not just categorizing every time a person speaks into one of the 4 guiding questions. Okay? It could be in more than one guiding question. But your ultimate goal would be put at the top your guiding question and then organize all of your participants' thoughts into what that guiding question is. What questions do you have? Can you visualize what you're doing there? Okay, next slide, please. So what to do, this is a review. Immediately after your group, make a diagram, debrief, organize your thoughts. Prepare your transcripts. Organize and delineate by speaker, by question, whatever is useful to you. Then we need to start connecting the dots. We read through the transcripts for guiding question, and within that, we hope to end with a separate document for each guiding question. So we can end with a separate document for each guiding question. So when you have those initial findings and you really want to pull your coalition together, let's say you have a coalition meeting, a couple things to keep in mind. Anytime you're doing an oral report, it should be brief, clear, and concise when you're in this early data analysis phase. Sometimes your coalition members who are intimately involved in the data analysis will take one sentence you say and run with it in your community. You need to be very careful at this stage of your data analysis. Okay? We conducted a data analysis. Our initial findings are providing us some new insights here, here, and here. These are issues we want to explore further, and we want to work with our data. Okay? You want to make sure you're limiting the number of key points that you have. You want to make sure you're verifying findings with other staff, and you're not giving so much information, because if you have that one wild card that one person said, you don't want your community to run with it. Okay? Sometimes it's better to wait until you have a full report. So I would suggest that if you have that coalition meeting, you're going to brief them on your focus groups, but you're not quite done yet. Touch base with your OSET evaluator or your OCAM coach on how to communicate that information. It's very easy for things to kind of ramp off like wildfire at this point, right? So you may be able to say, oh, we found something new in this, whereas we're finding, and I'm just going to say something completely random here, that would probably never happen. We're finding that kids have found a way to break into prescription lock boxes, right? Well, maybe that was one child who said that, but you could really start a community-wide panic if you say that one youth in one of your focus groups is talking about breaking into lock boxes. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. Like, you want to really be cautious when you're reporting these initial findings. When you do have key points that you want people to remember, limit them, really have your discussion points. Your messaging is really important at this time when your data analysis, I like to always say, is still in the oven a little bit, it's still baking. And then when you have those final reports is when you can provide a more in-depth conversation with yours. We have our references as usual because, of course, we didn't get this on our own. Our next steps are look for those 2 asynchronous webinars posted on the SPF PFS website. It'll be data analysis part 2 and reporting. Thanks to some of your questions. I'll talk with April when she gets back vacation next week. We had some good ideas for some templates for those reports. We'll see if we can pull some together to use as tools. And if we can, we'll definitely message those out to you. So I appreciate your questions. They've already given me ideas that I've jotted down here. If you have any other ideas